BBC News, and we're talking about the situation in eastern Ukraine. I've got two quick questions for you, Alexei. First of all, what is it that means that the spike in violence happens in Slavyansk rather than another town in eastern Ukraine? What is it that's particularly focusing everyone's attention on this place?
It just so happened there were takeovers of government buildings in other cities in the Donbass and eastern Ukraine as well, but they're quite low key. Here in Slavyansk, it so happened that it became the focus of various pro-Russian groups congregating. They appointed a very robust local mayor who basically deposed the previous mayor, and this is also the place where they managed to capture Ukrainian armor in the first attempt some time ago. Plus, this is the place where the killing took place at the barricades that the pro-Russian protesters mounted. So it's a focus of all that grievance, and I think it so happened that it is around this particular city.
And for good reason, we've been talking a lot about these particular places in eastern Ukraine, but it's easy to forget there's a whole other section of the country out there. We're talking about the west of central Ukraine. Presumably life carries on much as normal.
Life carries on as normal, and I think even in the Donbass area, life carries on as normal. Our reporters from Donetsk, which is the capital of this region, were saying that yes, there's dancing around the town hall, but 10 minutes away from the city, life carries on as normal. The rest of Ukraine is certainly not tense. Not tense in terms of logistics, in terms of movements, in terms of progress, but it is obviously very, very tense. People are watching with great anxiety what's going on there. And not the last election, Boris Johnson had received a flag of Russian flags in Lebanon. Foreign Minister Lavrov, after his very, very robust interview yesterday with Russia Today, will speak again today, and we'll hear what the Russian reaction will be to the events in Slavansk shortly.
Alexei, thank you very much. And Alexei's like that live feed coming in to outside source 7 on one of the screens which shows all the live feeds coming into the BBC Newsroom. And now people on Twitter, and Alexei is for sure, as soon as he goes away from his desk, he's going to be right back on his phone. Because at the moment, social media, YouTube, very useful sources of information on what's happening in Slovenia. After just the first couple of videos starting to come through on the checkpoint, where there seems to have been a number of clashes today, we'll retweet a couple of videos that people are sharing. Bear in mind the source though, these are just things that are being shared, these are not necessarily things that the BBC has filmed itself. Okay, let's turn our attention to
BBC News. This is Outside Source to Ross.
let's turn our attention to South Korea because the school that lost 250 pupils from last week's ferry disaster is opening its doors to the students who will cover that story. Underneath stories here at the BBC News, President Obama is still in Asia, day 2 of his trip there. He's warned China that Japan's administered violence in the East China Sea are protected under the two countries' military alliance. An Afghan security guard who was Nigerian has killed 16 protesters. Relatives of those killed in the collapse of Bangladeshi garment factory a year ago have been staging a protest. Let's talk further about the South Korean school which has been so terribly affected by the ferry disaster. It's lost in the region 250 pupils. Its remaining students are being allowed back for the first time today, and the focus though is not, of course, lessons. It's all about offering help and support as they do their very best to try and cope with the extraordinary grief they've been exposed to. Let's speak with Jaewon Cho, a journalist who's covering the story from Seoul. Jaewon, what support specifically will these students be offered?
Well, the local hospital and also the Red Cross is offering the psychological support, sending their doctors, and also they're sending a number of volunteers to help the students being recovered by the psychological disaster. And many of them are still staging at the high school right now, and many of the volunteers also at the memorial service, which is located in Ansan, which is very closely located near the high school. So everyone are now sending their hopes and sending their volunteering efforts to the high school, also the memorial service. So multiple efforts is ongoing here in South Korea.
And Joanne, I know that you visited the school in the area yesterday. Just tell us a little bit about the people you met.
Well, I visited the memorial service yesterday. today which is located very closely to the high school, which I mentioned before. And some of them are showing their tears, and some of them sending their text messages via like a smartphone, and some of them writing their post-it and showing their condolences to the victims of the same passengers. And most of them are not involved, but I'm thinking they're the victims, just as like their daughters or the sons, the many of them they're showing tears. Also, I heard that many entertainers and many politicians are visiting here at the Hansa memory service. So just in temporary memory service having in Hansa now, and I heard that the main memory service will be held later this week. So I think the magnitude of the votes are really higher, and we will just really expect a large memory service this week. So we're expecting more and more people coming through the memory service.
John, thank you for speaking to us on Outside Source. I'm sure everyone listening around the world sends their best wishes to everyone at that particular school in South Korea. Now, every day on Outside Source at the moment, we're speaking to Will Ross in Nigeria, because we're busy working on this extraordinary, terrible story. A huge group of Nigerian schoolgirls have been abducted by the Islamist Boko Haram. Hi, Will, good to have you back on.
Yeah, hi.
And how have you been getting on?
Well, just trying to piece together any information we can from Chibok itself, this remote area up in the northeast, and there clearly the desperation is turning to anger with the government, really. I've spoken to one father who told me that they just feel thoroughly let down by the government, and when I said that the military have put out a statement saying that they are intensifying the search, he just said, you know, that they haven't shown us that they've done anything yet. I'll have to see it with my own eyes first. So there's sort of a disbelief that anything is really being done to look for the girls. Whereas, as I say, the military says they're searching, and now the information minister, Labaran Maku, has described the whole event as a national tragedy, although it did take him 9 days to come up with that. And he says the security forces are on the heels of these kidnappers, but frankly the record of the Nigerian military in this particular area, the Sambisa forest, has not been good.
Well, Will, tell us about that forest, because lots of people have been talking to me on Twitter about it, and it conjures up some images of being a relatively small, manageable area, but I'm sure it's absolutely not. How big is it?
It's vast. I had actually thought for some time that it was a fairly small area, because when you look at it on the map, the bit that's identified as Sambisa Forest, the designated forest area, is relatively small, but the senator from the area who's in charge of that area, Borno South, he said it's about 100 kilometers from west to east, and fairly broad as well, north to south. It stretches right over towards the Cameroonian border. And so, because the militants have been operating in that area, they know the terrain very well, and what we've been getting from military sources is that it is an incredibly difficult place for them to go and operate. Difficult also for the Air Force to be deployed, but certainly the military has claimed in the past to have destroyed camps in this forest, but they keep coming up with the same line: we've hit their camps, we've hit their camps, and they've been saying it now for about 15 months.
Difficult too for journalists to operate there as well. Will, thank you very much. I suspect we'll speak to you again on Outside Source tomorrow. Those of you listening, Will's tweeting as he gets developments on this story. We'll push out his Twitter details via ours, so just go to @BBCOS and you'll get all of that straight away. Now, those of you who have elderly relatives who require your care will, I think, want to hear this next story. A report in England today says the number of older people needing care will outstrip the number of relatives able to provide it within 3 years. And this is an issue the world over. Here's Jackie Leonard from Outside Source.
Most care for older people isn't provided by the state or private agencies, but by family members, and an estimated value of about £55 billion or $92 billion annually. However, the Institute for Public Policy Research, a centre-left think tank, says that a growing family care gap is developing. Well, let's look at two different examples. We've heard before about Japan's demographic time bomb, ageing population, fewer people around to care for them, and India, a country which is often held up as an example of good family care. Well, Charles Scanlon is our East Asia editor, and he joins me now. So how serious is the issue in Japan, Charles?
Well, the population's actually been falling in Japan over the last 5 years. Japan's birth rate is 1.41. It's about the same as many European countries, but this has been going on for a very long time in Japan, and they're now getting to the stage whereby the number of pensioners is extremely large compared to the working population.
Let's look at India. Avinash Dutt of the BBC Hindi service is here. Now, just a couple of days ago, Avinash, Simon Hughes, a Liberal Democrat Justice Minister, was saying that Britain should follow the example set by Asian families when they're caring for the elderly. So how does India do it, and is it changing?
It's changing, and it's changing very fast. I have my example to speak of. I come from a very big family, and my grandfather died at the age of 94, and he had 6 sons and a daughter. And there were people always around, and I can't say that with full confidence about his sons, my uncles, and that I'll be able to do the same thing for them.
Charles, obviously you've talked about the changing population. You can't suddenly produce more working age people, of course, so what are the authorities doing about it?
The Japanese have really opted for a path whereby they try to manage the aging population as it happens. They introduced virtually free healthcare for the elderly decades ago. There are community centres. One thing that you notice when you see Japanese old people, and they're largely concentrated in the countryside outside the main cities, is how self-sufficient they are, how community-based they are, how they look after each other, how they keep themselves active. The Japanese population may be one of the most elderly in the world, but they're also some of the healthiest old people in the world.
And Avinash, you talked about your own family and how that's changing. Life expectancies are growing in India as they are elsewhere, and working patterns are changing and women's roles are changing. Is India worried about what's going on?
Yes, people are very much worried because the infrastructure is not there, the state support is not there, because India suddenly, there was a boom in economy, and the old structures, be it cultural structures, family structures, all the structures crumbled after globalization, that was after 1991. So there is a big population of elderly who don't have pensions, who don't have anything else to fall back on, and now they don't have their family members who will keep them and who are near them to take care of them.
Very interesting. Thanks to Jackie and my other colleagues for that report. Now, as you may have heard in the news, it's a year to the day since that terrible disaster in Bangladesh when a clothing factory collapsed, taking so many lives. Here's Ambrisen Natarajan for Outside Source, looking at some of the facts of that day and of the year that's followed.
More than 1,100 people were killed when the Rana Plaza complex collapsed last year. The building owner has been arrested and he could face murder charges. A series of measures have been implemented since then to improve building safety and work conditions. The monthly minimum wage for garment workers has been increased from $38 a month to $68. Western retailers have set up a $100 million fund to improve safety standards in the clothing sector. The government has eased laws to allow trade unions in Bangladeshi clothing factories. Bangladesh is considered to be the world's second largest exporter of clothes, next only to China. Last year, it exported clothes worth more than $22 billion. Nearly 80% of its exports goes to Europe and the United States.
Thanks very much to Ambrisen Natarajan for that. We're going to put that on SoundCloud and tweet it out as well if you're interested to share it with people who have been following that story. We're going to be live in Chennai in a moment.
Documentaries on the BBC World Service.
You will be able to play the game. At the end of that 15 minutes, you will know absolutely all the names of the countries in Africa.
Technology continues to transform education.
What is so powerful with this is it will give me the exact problem that he missed.
But is a revolution now taking place?
We just announced that course online. Within the first few hours, we had 10,000 students enrolled in the course.
From elementary schools to universities, we look at new forms of online teaching and ask if it's the best way forward.
Are you trying to fill the students with information, or are you trying to light fires and help them understand and think about the world in their own way?
The question is it good for education?
The Education Revolution continues Tuesday at 8, 12 and 14:30 GMT on the BBC World Service.
Hi, this is Ross Atkins with Outside Source, live from the BBC Newsroom. 4 stories we're going to be looking at in the next 30 minutes. A UK campaign to stop young men going from the UK to Syria to support the rebels. We're going to focus on the Indian election, live from Chennai and Mumbai. Also on the European elections coming up with Chris Morris and Matthew Price. We've got a special report as well from BBC Newsbeat on plastic surgery and its surge in popularity among young people. So lots to get through.
BBC News with David Austin. Ukraine's Interior Ministry says it's destroyed 3 checkpoints manned by illegal armed groups in the eastern city of Slavyansk, and 5 people it described as terrorists were killed. The Interior Minister also said government troops had succeeded in clearing pro-Russian militants from a government building in the southeastern city of Mariupol. The information has not been independently confirmed. Russian officials have warned the Ukrainian government not to move against the separatists. President Obama has warned China that Japanese-administered islands in the East China Sea are protected under Japan's military alliance with the United States. He reiterated the U.S. position on the second day of his visit to Tokyo in what was intended as a clear signal to Beijing. Thousands of people are protesting on the streets of the Bangladeshi capital Dhaka, a year after more than 1,100 workers lost their lives when a garment factory collapsed. The demonstrators, who included some of the injured, called for the owner of the Rana Plaza factory complex to face the death penalty. A security guard in Afghanistan has shot dead 3 American doctors working at a hospital in the capital Kabul run by an American Christian charity. 2 others were wounded. The attacker, who shot himself, is in police custody. It's the second attack on a Christian target in Afghanistan this year, after a guest house was targeted in March. A suicide bomber has exploded a car at a police checkpoint in the city of Hilla, south of the capital Baghdad, killing at least 8 people and wounding more than a dozen. The attack comes a week before parliamentary elections. The Nepalese tourism minister has said the government will give all possible help to climbers planning to scale Mount Everest. Sherpa guides are considering cancelling all ascents after the deaths of 16 of their colleagues in an avalanche last week, and are demanding more pay and compensation and better insurance. BBC News.
Live from BBC News in London, this is Outside Source with Ross Atkins.
Well, I'm just glancing across some of the stories I know we're going to be covering in the next 30 minutes. On one of the live TV feeds coming into the BBC News, and I can see Sanjoy Majumdar in Chennai. He's about to go on BBC World News Television. Once he's done there, we're going to speak to him live here on Outside Source Radio. We'll also connect him with Yogita Limaye, who's going to be live from Mumbai with the latest on the Indian elections. We're going to find out more about a new campaign in the UK to try and persuade young men to stop going from the UK to Syria to help fight the rebels. We've got a special report from the BBC's Newsbeat on a surge in popularity for plastic surgery among young people. Natalia Antilava's got a new report from the Russia-Ukraine border, and on that subject there's new information all the time coming in about clashes at a checkpoint in Slavyansk in the east of Ukraine. Expect updates on that across the half hour.
Follow at BBC Ross Atkins or use the BBC OS hashtag for more on Outside Source.
In fact, let's just piece together some of the different bits of information that are out there about what's happening in Slavyansk. Now, this is the place in eastern Ukraine where a few days ago a couple of people were killed, 3 I think, at a checkpoint, a pro-Russia checkpoint, and all sides are pointing the finger at other people saying it was them, it was them. It was very unclear what has happened. Well, the problems continue in that town. The Kiev Post is saying 5 dead, 1 wounded as anti-terror operation continues in Slavyansk. The BBC's Mark Urban tweets, reports Ukraine forces are attacking pro-Putin elements in Slavyansk and who say 2 men have been killed. We've got Nikolai Leonardo Garik from Russia Today tweeting Kiev is committing a terrible crime incited by the US. That is with reference, I think, to what's happening today. And the Moscow correspondent for the Wall Street Journal says twice have seen police forces setting up sandbags, concrete barriers on road to Donetsk from Orlovka. Seems to be a Kiev allied operation, not rebels. So lots of information swirling around. We'll try and pull more of that together for you in the next few minutes. But now, let's do something which we're hoping to do before the news, but a couple of technical hitches meant we'll do it now. We're going to connect 2 of my colleagues who are 1,300 kilometres apart, but are both covering the Indian elections. I'm going to let my colleagues Yogita Limai in Mumbai and Sanjoy Majumdar in Chennai take up the story. Hi, Yogita.
Hi, Ross. I'm at a polling booth in the western suburb of Bandra, and we've been here since morning, and we've seen actually quite a rush of people. Let me just, describe. I'm actually standing at the last point where I can before, and beyond this you aren't allowed. Beyond me, there's basically a queue of people. It's a primary school, and the passages and the hallways today have been converted into a polling booth. So I can see a long queue of people there. There's an officer sitting with lots of papers. That's